My good people, I am so glad, so thankful, so blessed that you decided to tune in to this video. I know it's been a while since I posted the last video, but I promise this won't be worth the wait. Today, I wanted to talk about pursuing your dreams and having faith in God's timing. I know a lot of you guys have big dreams, big aspirations, things that you want to accomplish, and things you want to see happen in your lives. And I believe that comes from God. I believe that anytime you have a passion or interest or a desire to do something on an extraordinary level, it's something that's bigger than yourself. And I know God is just faithful to finish what He started each of us, no matter how hard things may get, no matter, how tough the situations may get. I know sometimes our dreams scare us. And when we look at our circumstances and how things are going around us and the things we're facing and the obstacles that we're up against, it can be discouraging at times. So I just want to inspire and uplift and motivate you through this video on today. I want to talk about the story of Joseph. And the story of Joseph is found in the book of Genesis, which is the very first book of the Bible, in the 37th chapter. So, that'd be a good story for you to, look at and read over and meditate over when you taking time out to enrich yourself spiritually, like we talked about in the other video. So basically, Joseph was the son of Jacob, and Jacob had 12 children. Joseph was the youngest of the children, so he was the baby boy, but he also was the favorite of Jacob. And this made all of his other brothers just sick. They were jealous. They didn't really like him. He didn't have to do some of the same hard work that they had to do. His dad was always giving him extra stuff, giving him preferential treatment. And, that really caused his siblings to despise him. And another thing about Joseph was a dreamer. And yeah, he was a real life dreamer. And what I mean by a dreamer is that God would give Joseph dreams, and he also had the ability to interpret dreams. So he knew what God was trying to show him in not only his dreams, but other people's dreams. So one night, Joseph had this dream that basically everybody in his family was bowing down to him. And he went and told his siblings and went and told his family the dream. And his brothers, they were livid. They were hot. They were upset. Like, boy, you shouldn't have did that. So, they're up here just upset about him saying that. Like, oh, nah. And, that really even made things more hostile between them. So, one day Joseph's older brothers were off tending to the sheep. They were shepherds, so they were off, some miles down the road tending to the sheep. And Joseph's dad told Joseph, like, hey, go check on your brothers, like, see what's going on with them, like, make sure they're all right and everything. So Joseph went and sat down the road to go find his brothers and make sure everything was all right. And as he was approaching his brothers from the distance, his brothers saw him and they said, hey, there's that dreamer. And another one said, yeah, man, let's kill him. And another one's like, okay, yeah, let's kill him. But then one of the other brothers like, nah, let's not kill him. That'll probably make, dad, real sad and stuff like that. But we'll just act like an animal ate him or something like that. And so they end up throwing him in a huge ditch in the ground and taking a piece of his clothing and taking it back to his father, saying that a vicious animal ate him. And that's all they found left was this piece of clothing. But what they actually really ended up doing was they sold their own brother into slavery to some complete strangers. And the person they sold him to was an Egyptian by the name of Potiphar. So Joseph was sold as a slave to Potiphar and basically taken back to Egypt to work in his house. So Joseph was a slave in this man's house, and Joseph was a very good worker, and Potiphar liked him and gave him a lot of responsibility around the house. And Joseph was also a very godly man. He was also a very attractive young man. So while he was living at Potiphar's house, Potiphar's wife began to come on to him. So she would try to seduce him into having sex with her and, to do these things. And Joseph, being the man that he was, knew that was the wrong thing to do. Like, hey, I'm living with Potiphar. This is his wife. God wouldn't like if I, slept with this woman. So he, basically denied her, say, no, I'm not trying to do that. So basically Potiphar's wife proceeded to try to rape him. So she goes grabbing him and ripping his clothes off of him. And Joseph is like trying to, avoid all of this. So he takes off running, and she ripped his clothes off. So Joseph just running down the street, butt naked, just running. And that's a whole nother lesson. Sometimes we got to run away from temptation, man. We got to run away from problems. We got to run away from things that's not right. So Joseph is running down the street, butt naked. And you know how y'all women are, man. She's upset. She just got turned down. She's like, man, like, how y'all get sometimes. Y'all get kind of bitter and start raising all kind of mess and nonsense. So she's like, okay. So she goes up to one of the guards and says, hey, Joseph just tried to rape me. I got his garment right here. He just tried to rape me and all this stuff like that. So Joseph basically gets locked up and put in prison for doing something that he didn't even do. And, so he ends up in prison. And, while in prison, Joseph is crying out to God, and, he's frustrated, like, I'm doing the right thing and I still end up in this situation, and, all of these things. And he meets two other guys while he's in prison locked up. So the two guys had dreams, and they came up to Joseph and they were just telling him about his dream. And he was like, yeah, such and such happened. So basically Joseph interpreted the dream for one of the guys and said that, hey, in 3 days you're going to be released from prison, and you're going to resume your job you had before you got locked up as the right hand man of the Pharaoh. So true enough, the prophecy came true. And once he got out, before he got out, Joseph said, hey, when you get out, don't forget about me now. Let the Pharaoh know I'm in here and I'm locked up, man. Let him know. Don't, I'm down here. I want to get out. And the guy's like, oh yeah, I got you, man. I'm gonna definitely tell him. So the guy gets released from prison in 3 days, just like he said. And he basically forgot all about Joseph. And, he just living his life, and he forgot about, the guy that helped him get out of there. And, Joseph's in prison, and, 2 years went by. And after those 2 years, the Pharaoh had a dream, and this dream disturbed him. And, he was calling people in from all over the place and trying to figure out and interpret what this dream meant. And nobody could figure it out. And God brought it back to a remembrance of his right-hand man that was locked up with Joseph, to remember Joseph locked up in prison down there. So he said, oh yeah, man, I remember this guy that was in prison. He told me about my dream. I think he can help. So the Pharaoh's like, all right, bring him up. Let's see what he can do. So basically Joseph was able to interpret the dream that the Pharaoh had. And basically the dream that the Pharaoh had was saying that Egypt is going to have 7 years of prosperity, and they're going to have 7 years of really bad famine, and that they need to prepare themselves for that so they'll be ready and all of these things. So the Pharaoh, basically said, hey, since all of this stuff, like, I want you to spearhead the effort to make sure we're ready for this and to prepare us and to manage all of these things. So long story short, he ended up being second in command to Egypt, only behind the Pharaoh. And God basically granted him favor through all these situations and everything he went through and stuff like that. And, during those 7 years of famine, some people came to the palace, and they wanted food because they were starving, and, the region they were at, they didn't have anything to eat. So, at this time, Joseph is completely different. He's dressed in, Egyptian attire. He has on makeup, his headpiece. And when these people come into the palace, ironically, it's his brothers and it's his family that sold him into slavery. So Joseph is looking at them, talking to him, and Joseph knows that it's them, but they don't know that it's Joseph that they're talking to because it's been so much time. He's dressed different, and all of these things like that. So basically at that moment he realized the prophecy came true. Like, they're bowing down to me, they need my help, and I'm a king. And by the time this ended up happening, Joseph was 30 years old. Joseph was 17 years old when he first had that dream of them bowing down to him. And, he went through so much to get to that point, from being sold into slavery by his family, to being a slave, to being in prison for something he didn't even do, to getting to that point. And I know it's a lot of things God told us we can be and we can become, but it's not always in our timing. And it's not that we can't or won't become these things. It's a process we have to go through. So we got to trust our process. We got to trust God when things are, going bad for us, even when we're doing the right thing, even when we're doing the best we can, because ultimately he has a plan. And, I know at that moment, it was a defining moment for Joseph just to see all of that come full circle. And, oftentimes we get caught up into looking at other people's circumstances and what's going on for them and how other people are getting success, and even people that's ungodly and people that's not doing the right thing. But we got to trust God to bring the right things to us at the right time, because we set up times and ages in our life when things should happen. By the time I'm 25, I should have this. By the time I'm 28, this should happen. By the time I'm 30, this and that. But ultimately, God has the ultimate say so in our lives. And when we go trying to do things and force things by our muscle, it throws things out of whack. That's why you see so many people with bad credit, filing bankruptcy, filing for divorce, because they're trying to do things that's not necessarily meant for them at that time. Everything has an appointed time. And when you depend on God and trust God to bring things to you at the right time, they're going to last. They're going to be there for the long run, because it came from him and it's not something you just made up yourself. So, I just want to encourage you guys. I just want to uplift you to trust your process. Sometimes it takes a little longer than what we think, but I promise at the end it's worth it. I know Joseph, when he became, basically the man in Egypt, he looked back at those days and was like, man, I remember I used to be a slave, man. I remember those days I was locked up, I was broke, I didn't have no friends. Now he looking at himself now like, man, it was all worth it, man. It was all worth the struggle, the heartache, the pain. It made me into who I am today. And all the hard times you're going through is building character. It's making you stronger for when your time does come, you're fully prepared for it. So I just want to end on this scripture. It's Proverbs 13:12. It says, hope deferred makes the heart sick, but when dreams come true, there is life and joy. So, basically to me, that verse means that, it does weigh on you when things aren't going your way. It does hurt when you see your plans falling through and when you fail. But when that dream does come true, when it's time for it to manifest, it renews you. It gives you life. It gives you a joy that's unexplainable, because it's no greater feeling than setting a goal for yourself or having a dream and watching it come true, especially when you defied the odds, especially when you overcame obstacles, you kept the faith, you fought through. And that's what being a crown champion is all about. It's about knowing that we already crowned. We already have a crown through Christ Jesus, but we just got to run the race. We got to just finish. We just got to keep going no matter how tired we get, no matter how many obstacles come our way. That, man, I already got the crown. I just got to run the race. So run your race, man. Continue to stay positive, uplift others around you. I hope this video blessed you on today. If it did, share it with somebody, man. Feel free to like it, leave comment suggestions for future topics of discussion. Also follow us on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook at Crown Champions. It's your boy, man. Salute to all my dream chasers. Salute to everybody keeping the faith. God bless. Till next time, take care.